The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming on by to Great Garment Graphics and our webinar on TwillStitch Pro, Add Appliqué to Your Sales. I'm Stephen Jackson with Imprintables Warehouse, and today we're going to run you through and show you some of the features and abilities of TwillStitch Pro, show you some of the tips and tricks to make your designs a little bit better, and jump in and show you a few specialty designs and how you can achieve that, and go through the process from beginning to end, hopefully, for you. So first and foremost, we've got a couple poll questions like we usually do on these webinars, and we're going to bring up those poll questions right in the beginning. I like to get them done first off so that we don't have to jump back and forth on them. So, and Jody's helped me out here. She'll bring up the first poll question for us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jody, and thank you for joining us today. Our first poll question that I'm getting ready to share is, do you currently produce applique designs? Please answer yes or no. And then I'll leave these polls open just for a moment.
Yeah, we'll leave them open for just a short while. You can track, Jody, how they come up and see when just about everybody's answered it.
You know what, Stephen? I think I'm having some difficulty with this particular poll question, so how about we just flip to the next one?
Okay.
For that. And so our next question is, do you currently cut your own applique? Please select yes or no.
What we mean by do you currently cut your own applique is you're either using an aisle line, a flatbed cutter, a roll feed cutter like a Roland GX24, or maybe you've even got a laser engraver cutter and you're cutting it that way. So are you getting the twill or fabric or whatever you're using and cutting it yourself? So we're just looking for you to select yes or no on that. Okay.
So our poll results, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
I can see them, yep. Pretty quick response on that. Thanks, everybody. And quite a bit, almost two-thirds there, are saying no, that they don't. So we're going to show you a couple of different methods, and I've got some short videos in here to show you the difference between a roll-fed cutter, the flatbed cutter like the aisle line, and then some laser cutting. So on to the third, and I believe this is the last one, correct?
Yeah, this would be the last one. And the question is, what type of cutter do you use for applique? Use an eye line, a Roland GX24, a laser, or do you have another piece of equipment that you use?
Should be pretty quick on the responses through this.
We're at 50% right now, Stephen. So we'll,
wow, these guys are quick today. They want to get into the meat of it all.
Close the poll right now.
Okay. And my guess is going to be GX24 is the majority.
And you are correct.
Ah, look at that, 45%, 9% for the aisle line. Got a few of you guys out there that are doing the laser. 41% on other. I'd be curious, and maybe Jody, you can help me out with this a little bit. For those of you that put down other, if you could just instead of it being a question, just shoot her a quick little note in there to let us see what you guys are using to cut other than one of these other three options. I can learn a little bit from it too, so that would be great if I could get that feedback from you folks out there. So fantastic. We'll jump back over to the lecture as it is. And I think you got to take down the poll there. There we go. Okay. So now we're in here. Let's go to the first slide. What does TwillStitch Pro do? And I've abbreviated TSP because I'm talking about it so much in this lecture. It's just quite a bit easier to put it that way. But what does this program do for us? It's not a full-fledged digitizing program. It's not something that we're going to go and take a piece of artwork and start from the beginning and go all the way to the end to where we have we're setting down fill stitches or anything like that. It's designed to make applique. It also has the ability to do fonts on top of that, work with some pre-cut shapes, and bring in different file types and work from them. I can take, say, a DST file or a CNV file from another project and include that in with the current applique that I'm working on. So if you've got another digitizing program, or say you've got something from Dakota Collectibles or something like that, and you want to integrate that into your applique, you can do that also. You can import that portion in. So like we say here, you can create design from plot files. So plot files could be something that you've gotten from, say, Corel Draw or Adobe Illustrator or even CADWorksLive.com. All these different sources that we can get these vector files that we would use also for our cutter. So that would be the exact placement to where we want our stitching. And ultimately, what we need out of this is to save it to various embroidery formats. Depending on the type of embroidery machine you have, you want to save it in your specific format so you can run it on that machine. So in a nutshell, that's what TwillStitch Pro does for us. So what we're going to go over next is we're going to go into TwillStitch Pro. We're going to talk about the design process. We're going to create a design. I'm going to be using Corel Draw and show you how I've got a file in there and how we could manipulate it. I see I got a response back here, thank you, that most of the others actually hand cut, so I had forgotten about that, putting down your placement line and then cutting it. And you could still do that with TwillStitch Pro. You'd be able to use a placement line feature in there and then have it stop after that and do your manual cutting. So this program will work great with that too. So back to this, we're going to create the design, open up a design in TwillStitch Pro and import that artwork. I'm going to talk about combining and controlling, because when you have that artwork or those different pieces, parts of the design, they may be clumped together, and we're going to talk about how combining them or keeping them separate can do different functions for you and how that will affect your overall design. We're going to transform the design to stitches, whether we're doing a tackle twill or I want an actual applique design or I'm looking for a bean stitch or whatever I'm looking for in my output. Adjust our machine functions. We're going to input in and change so that we can maybe have it frame in and frame out so that we can put down that applique design on our placement stitches with a lot more ease. And obviously our end game is to output the design in the proper format. So with that all up, I'm going to bring over Corel Draw for you folks. I'm working with a dual monitor system, so you'll see me dragging some stuff back and forth here. So hopefully you can see it. There we go. I've got in here in Corel Draw 5, I've got this Alabama design on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side is just Stephen in 88. Pretty simple collegiate font on that one, single line going through it. But what I've done is I've created this in here. You could be using maybe CADWorks Live or any other program that works in Vector to design this. The Alabama's in here because anyone who gets TwillStitch Pro, that is a file that is included with the program. And we're going to play around with that design and show you what you can and can't do with the program. So I've got Stephen 88. We'll even just take this one, and in Corel here, I would select that, whatever I've designed up. CADWorks Live, Illustrator are all going to do similar functions. And in here, we're going to export. So when I export that file, I've got my webinar one there, and I'll call it Stephen Shen. And I want to export it as a plot file. If I export it as an encapsulated PostScript, that is a file format that can come up in TwillStitch Pro. But what I found is working with encapsulated PostScript, sometimes it doesn't recognize when different objects in the graphic are connected together or not connected together. So exporting as a plot function or a plotter file is a much cleaner way to bring the graphic over for us, and works very, very well for TwillStitch Pro. So we'll call it Stephen Shen. We're just doing the selected portion only, and we'll export it. It'll come up with some questions about the pen and the page and all that. We're just going to go with the default settings here. And we should have that exported out. So now we'll move Corel out of the way. And I'm going to bring over TwillStitch Pro. So here we see TwillStitch Pro. I'm going to go through some of the buttons on here. I'm not going to take the time to go through button by button, function by function, and I'll try to hit most of them so you guys can see what's going on. And we have all of the functions up here. File, we're going to create a new file. I already have it open there. I could open an existing file all the way down through, import artwork, print preview, all that. So let's start off with importing some artwork. Now, if I click on the import artwork, it's going to search through the different places that I could have had this. And we already have it to here on that Shen design, the Stephen Shen. And let's cancel that for a minute, though, because I want to try to show you folks with the design that is already in TwillStitch Pro how you can go to some of these pre-cut shapes and use that one plotter file, the Alabama design, and show you how to work with that, because that's one that you'll already have in there. If you have TwillStitch Pro at home, You can follow along later on while watching the webinar because this is going to be recorded, and you'll be able to watch it at a later time so you can catch all the little things you might have missed. If we go to this folder down here, this is our To Twill artworks. I can look in the plots. I can look in shapes, and under shapes I have all these different shapes. These are also pre-cut shapes. Stalls provides these ones. You can order them up from them and have the pre-cut shapes sent to you. So you have a lot of different options that we could bring in. And we'll go back to our plots, and there's examples. And under shapes we have satin zigzag. So we've got different outlines for them already, so you can work with that. Well, let's work with the plot, that Alabama design that's already in there. When I hit OK, it brings the design in. Once we've got this in here, I can see that I've got my different colors for the artwork, and is a solid square over here. This indicates that that is a piece of artwork. And I think you guys can see everything that I've got there. Let me move it over a little bit just to make sure you can see the full screen. And can everybody see the full screen, Jody? Can you see the left-hand side there?
Yes, I can see. I can see the full screen.
Okay. It looked like it was cutting it off slightly. So you can see the different colors over here that represent the colors of the artwork in there. If I click on one of them, it's selecting all of these. So that tells me right off the bat that these are locked together. And if you brought in a piece of artwork that maybe you exported it from CADWorks or Corel or something, you had everything grouped together or locked together, it could do this also. So it can be a little confusing. All you have to do is right-click on that, and then we can go down to Ungroup. And now when I left-click off of that and select any one of these, I've got the single item there. So first off, I'm looking at this, and that yellow is tough to see. So let's change it to a color that's a little bit easier to work with. Maybe I'll pick this brown over here. So I've got my colors of my needles on the other side over here, and I can right-click on that, and now the Alabama portion is in a brown. It's easier for me to see on the screen. These represent over here the needles you have on your machine. So I could even come over here and right-click and add a color. So say if I had a 15 needle machine, I could keep adding colors on down in the sequence that I have on the machine, and you can set it up to represent what you're normally working with. So in each one of these, when I left-click on it, you can see it opens up a thread chart for me, and I've selected in my defaults that I work with Madeira Polyneon, and it has all the different colors in here. I can even type in the color number. So this one was 1977. Let's try one other, and we'll go back to 1977. So 1977. Hey, there's my blue color again, and it's selected it, and that's my #1 needle on the machine, so I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. So you can customize this over here to do what you want. I'm looking at the sequence of everything over here, and you can see that the brown is kind of at the top of the whole working order. But if I was going to stitch this, I'm going to be working from the back, or the largest piece, the red one, all the way up to the brown being my last piece that I work with when I'm on the machine. So we're out of sequence over here. So what I can do with this is I can literally grab the guy here, just left-click and hold, and I'll drag it down to the bottom. And now it's resequenced that it's down at the bottom there. Again, with the blue one, I'll bring it down, and now I've got it in the correct sequence where red would go first, blue would be second, and the brown would be third. I can expand each one of these and see that there's, by the little plus symbol over to the side there, and I can see that that's artwork there, and I expand this one, and I've got two pieces of artwork within it. It's got the blue line right there, and then another blue piece right here. I can grab individual pieces of artwork there. I could move it around or delete it or whatever I wanted to do. And on the last one here, we'll see a whole bunch of artwork. And we're going to, when we start digging into the design a little bit more, we're going to show you why you may want to combine some of these. Off to the side over here also, I have these little eyeball icons. I click on that, the red goes away. It's still available to me. It's still in the design, but it's no longer clouding up my screen, and I can work a little bit easier throughout the program. So since I want to show you the different pieces in here and how they work on the brown portion, I'm going to turn off the blue and the red, and we're just going to work with the brown inner, the last layer we would be stitching out the Alabama there. So let's take this Alabama, and I'm going to make a very simple tackle twill design with it. So to do that, I've got my artwork in here. I can right-click on it and simply go down to Convert To, and I've got my different functions here: Run, Steel Stitch, Appliqué, or Tackle Twill. We'll make it a Tackle Twill, and you see, bam, that quick, it turns over into a tackle twill design. Now you'll notice when you're working with the tackle twill or applique, if I'm going to convert it to an applique, it takes a lot longer. That's because it's trying to calculate out everything, where the stitches are laying and all that. It takes a little bit longer for it to process it. Now as I look at this design, maybe I want to adjust how close they are. I need to put a placement line down. I've seen some videos out there and some discussions and demonstrations where they show you to make a copy or artwork and then take that copy and make it your placement line. But TwillStitch Pro Plus really has a lot more features in it that allows you to do a lot of that automatically. So we'll right-click on our design over here. And when I go down to the bottom, I've got the Properties button. And I can click on Properties for this, and it'll open up a little window for me. Where'd my window go to? I think I have it on the other screen here. So let me see if I can find that real quick. I apologize. And I think it's hiding on me. There it is. I found it. It was buried under a couple other screens on the other one over here. So here I have my properties for that portion there. I can adjust the width, so maybe I want to go with a little lower width, say like a 3.2 millimeter. So I've got it a little bit smaller there. That smoothed it out in some of those corners because it's not trying to do so big of a stitch. I can change the inset. I've heard all sorts of different things on inset, anywhere from 75 to 85. I personally like a 90% inset, and that'll go to the inside line. Let's make this 70 for right now, and I'll hit apply. And I'm going to put a placement line in there because right now you can't really see the edge of the graphic. And the placement line, if I just click on that and hit apply, you'll see that's the line, the edge of my graphic before we convert it over to a stitch. And you can see right where that was at. And I can even change the offset of that. If I want to have my placement line slightly in so that the edge, if it's slightly off when I've applied it on there and I'm not doing the satin stitch, maybe I'm doing just a tackle twill or a bean stitch for one of the specialty designs that we're going to show you later on, I might want to have that offset and in a little bit. So I can maybe do 20% or 10%. Let's do 10% in, and we'll apply that. And it moved slightly in for me. Now remember I said I like my inset personally at about 90. I don't like too much of it hanging over the edge on my tackle twill. So now it's 90%. It's nice and up against that edge. There's just a little tiny bit that's sticking over, and I've got a nice looking design all the way across. On my placement line right there, I can also tell it to put a stop in. So what this would do, once I hit apply, you'll see that stop pop up. There's the stop on that. See how many stops I have in here? It means it's going to do a placement line and stop on each one of them. And in a second here, I'll show you, well, we'll go to it right now. If I were to stitch this design out, I'm going to move that off the screen a little bit so you guys can see better. If I were to stitch this design out right now, it would not go as smooth as we would really want it to be. So let's go ahead and go to View, and we'll go to Slow Redraw. And what you'll see is that, let's slow it down there. Notice that it did the placement line for that, did a stop, and it's going right into the tackle twill of that. Since it's going right into the tackle twill of it, I'm not able to get a real good, I'm not able to put my applique down in time with a placement line. So that's not working real well with the placement line there. What I can do to change all of this, let's bring our design piece back over, and we're going to get out of this redraw on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back up a couple of steps. Remember I talked about combining the design and the artwork? Well, let's back up until we're back to just artwork. And right about there. I've got all these different items in here, and that's why it did the placement line for this and it finished that out, because it sees that as an individual object, which it is, and not part of the bigger design of Alabama there. So what I'll do instead with this is I'll select everything that is in the brown area, I'll right-click, and I can go down to Combine. And when I combine all of it, now it's a single piece all the way through, and now when I go over and right-click again and convert to, and go to my tackle twill, change this over to 3.2 like we did before, or whatever you wanted to in your design, put in my placement line. I can even put that stop in there. When I do the stop this time and hit apply, you'll see that there's a single stop. So it's going to do the placement line for the entire design, and then it'll stop. So now I've got an outline. I can take all my pieces of tackle twill that I'm going to be putting on this applique and put it on there and know that it's in the correct position and not have to worry about it. We can also, now that we've done this, I've seen other demonstrations where they might show you to change the inset on this one piece, but since it's all one piece, one of the nicest features I think in TwillStitch Pro Plus is the ability to adjust holes. By just simply clicking this button here, you'll watch on the inside here, over in the A and the A here, when we hit apply, it shifts those holes out to where we would want it for this design. Very fast, very efficient, does a beautiful job on this. So right away I get my design changed up. I've got my placement line, I've got a stop in there, I've adjusted the holes. This design is almost set. I want to take my commands, and maybe on my start command I can change that to whatever I want, a stop or a frame in, frame out. How about on the end of this I could put a frame out in there, or we'll do our tie-offs as basics. But I didn't put in a frame in or a frame out. So let's take a look at how we would do that. Change this and put in a machine code for it. So we've got our Alabama design here. Let's close that portion out right now. And I'm going to come over and go to my Stitch Edit tool. When I click on the Stitch Edit tool, you'll notice it comes up with a whole list of items here all the way down and what their functions are. This isn't all of the stitches in the design. This is the functions. I can see my cuts. If I wanted to take those cuts off and not see them, I could click on this button here for the commands and it takes them out. I've got my stitch ends right here, so if I zoom in on that, you see the little dots that are right there. Those are your stitch ends. It kind of shows the needle points. And when I take that off, they go away. We'll put them back on. I kind of like watching them and seeing them there. We'll do this back to fit. And then I can even do a 3D or take the stitches away so that I just see the line of everything. I'm not looking at the stitches. I prefer to see the stitches because I can see how much it's moving into the design. And we can do a 3D effect here to give it kind of the stitch look right on the screen. So let's take that back off. But what I want to concentrate on with my Stitch Edit tool right here is I can come down to this stop right there, and when I right-click and go to Properties of it, it opens up and it shows me what command is right there to stop. I can actually, yes.
We have a question that just came in, and I thought maybe you'd want to get back to it.
Sure.
One attendee asking you to show the process on the internals of the lettering one more time.
Okay, to show how it adjusted those holes and everything? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go back over that in just a second. Let me finish this portion here. We've got that stop there, and what I want to do is instead of a stop there, I'm going to tell a machine code for it to frame out, and that'll push the hoop out, so now I'm able to put down all the lettering and pieces parts. So since I've got that stop selected, I can click on this, and right there I've got my frame out. When I hit apply, it changes that stop there. It shows it here also that it's a frame out. So that's how we would do that portion of it. So let's go back a couple. Actually, we can go back to our selection tool or right-click on this, and let's make this, convert this back to artwork. We'll make this real simple. And I don't know, I'll break it apart. So when I've broken it apart, we have all these different pieces of art in here. And you can see the different holes. All I'm simply doing for this is right-clicking. I'll combine everything together so it's one piece. If I didn't do that, let's back up. If I didn't do that, and I right-click and convert to Tackle Twill, you can see that the insides of the holes, they're not really where I would want that to be. And when we go to the properties of this, and if I click on Adjust Holes for it now, you really shouldn't see any movement because it still has that placement line where it is supposed to be. To adjust it, if I don't convert it all, I would have to go to each one of these, and on that portion there, okay, I'll have to change my inset. Instead of 80, I'm going to make it 20, and that'll push it to where it needs to be. I think going through each one of those and adjusting it, it's much, much easier for me to simply, we'll go back a couple steps to the artwork, simply take that artwork and all those items there, right-click on it, we'll combine it. Now it's one piece. Go down and convert to Tackle Twill, and when we look at the properties of this one, I can adjust the holes, and with a single click, now the holes have opened back up. And everything's where it needs to be because it's seeing that as a whole of the single object. So it's really a pretty powerful function of TwillStitch Pro and something that I personally like quite a bit. And I like changing my density a little bit, maybe taking it down to a 2, giving it more of a zigzag and open portion there. Placement, we'll stick it about 10% in, and we'll put a stop for the placement command and hit apply. So pretty much we've got a design there. I would want to do my tie in and tie off. And you can even apply a fabric to this if I wanted to. I could pick say a Columbia, hit apply, and now I've got that look of how it would be finished on the garment. I could put a fabric behind it too. We'll pick a fabric, say it's red, and now we've got a sweatshirt with the red behind it and the blue there, and you can see the stitching. So let's change the color on this to make it punch out a little bit. Maybe we'll take that brown and we'll click on it. We'll make it a white color. So now you can really see this design kind of pop out. So say this is the only portion I'm going to do on this design, and I want to be able to show this to the client and be able to get something out there for them and also have a proof for my operator. Well, I can go down here and we can go to a print preview. We've got a print set up, and right there I've got the whole layout of the design going across. I can get into my settings and make it 3D. I can have it do all the other portion of it, actual size and everything. We've got a 3D in there. Now this isn't going to put the backing on it to show what the different colors are. So on that one, you might just want to take a screen capture or something like that if you need that portion of it to show somebody. So right there we've got our design. Now we still have these other two portions here. So let's take that fabric off of the back. Let's change back a couple here. Let's go to the other two, which we still have in here. There's one right there, and there's one right here. So this is going to be the first one we're going to put down. So if that's the first one, I may or may not need placement lines for these depending upon what type of process I'm using. If I'm using a roll cutter where I'm doing single layers, or if I'm hand cutting it in single layers, we want to have a placement line each time because you're going to lay the fabric down and then put it on there and then cut it out by hand, or I've got separate pieces. Maybe I'm ordering pre-cuts that have 2 or 3 layers already to it, or if I'm using a flatbed cutter or a laser, I can do those in one shot. So let's take a look at this, and we'll go down to our last one here and go to the properties of it. And the properties of this one, I'm not going to put a placement line. I'll take that right off. We'll go to our next one here on this artwork, and I'll combine this one again. Actually, let's leave this one separate to work with that little portion right there. So this one will just convert to To Twill, and we can adjust that one in. We're not going to do a placement line. We'll take this down to, say, a 3, and we've got some nice setup there, and we're going to no placement line, no tack down. If I hit the adjust holes, it's not going to do anything for that because that's the only hole right there, and I just needed that little portion in there to finish it off. Don't forget our commands for our tie in and tie off, and these don't apply unless you hit apply. If I were to go back over to the To Twill without hitting anything, you'll see that they didn't apply. So that can kind of get you sometimes if you forget about it. So we'll hit apply on that one, and then to our last one here, we'll right click on that, convert to. And again, a To Twill, we'll take it down to a 3, and maybe our density on that will open it up to, we'll say a 2. And on this one, we're going to want the placement line, especially if we're doing this as a layered design already. We would need that first placement line for it all the way across. So I've got my placement line, I've got my second set and my third set right there, no placement lines for those. I don't need to adjust holes, it's only a single piece. And again, my tie-in, I'll do basic and tie off and hit apply. Now let's take a look at the design as it runs out, and we can kind of look at the whole thing and see if it's doing what we wanted to. So we'll go to slow redraw. You can see the different sections already on there, and we'll take this about to half speed and we'll hit play. So you can see it's going to put our placement line down. It would have a stop at the end of the placement line. There's our stop. And it's going to do our zigzag stitch all the way around this. So I could define if I wanted that to be a zigzag or satin. I can switch it up however I want with my design to make something that really is effective for everyone. We'll skip ahead a little bit here. And you can kind of even drag it along by hand so you can kind of have fun with it there, make it go back and forth. And our final piece on the center there, and we've got it all set. So I could also change each one of these and add a fabric to it. We'll go to the properties, and on this one, we're going to go and put a fabric on that. We'll pick a cream, and it filled that whole portion there, the red. Now notice, it looks like I may have switched this up. I dragged the red down to the bottom, so I need to drag that one back to the top. That's the first one done. And our blue here, let's take that one, and we'll change the fabric there, and we'll make that some sort of blue. Or we'll make that black. And see how it changes in between them, so I can visually show myself on the screen or take a screen capture of it and be able to show the different layers and different colors and how it's physically going to look. We'll make that 3D, and there's your design. Very, very cool, very effective. So hopefully that's updated on your screen over there. I don't quite see it coming across. Question came up, is there a setting to change, to change or make lock stitches? I'm guessing what you're meaning by the tie-in, tie-off. It's just basic and triangle. There's only 2 selections for that. There's no other way to change that in there. You can physically, if you want to go in and adjust that, you can physically go stitch by stitch and change that. You go to the stitch edit tool and pick that individual stitch and change it around. That's a lot of work. I found everything that I've tested out, everything that we've run in my wife's shop so far, that the basic or the triangle both have done a very good job. So please, to that one person there, let us know if that answered your question or not. So there we have the design there. So now I want to show you guys, before we jump too far ahead, let's take a look at a video and show the different cutting methods. So those of you that aren't cutting it on your own, and Jody, give me an affirmative that you guys can see this video on there. This is showing a Roland GX24 with a sheet fed, or with the roll cutter. And you notice a little test, the square and the circle over there. Can you see that okay, Jody?
Yep. It just came up just now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's lagging behind a little bit, and I do apologize for that. So, but you can see the roll cutter. It's going around, just moving the fabric back and forth, the twill there. And I've got that little circle and square in there. That's where I did the test cut on the material. Some of the things you want to think about when you're working with a roll cutter like this. You want to make sure you have a very good sharp blade. The 60-degree blade is preferred with it. It's a much more aggressive angle. It'll go through that twill smoother on there, and you'll get cleaner edges. And you are not sealing the edges with this. So with both the flatbed cutter and the roll cutter, your edges can fray. Now, with people who are looking for the distressed look, this is exactly what they're hoping for. They'll do their stitches inside of the edges of it there, and they'll let it fray up. I've been to different shops where people are going crazy with this, all the way to the extent of taking a board and putting the piece of applique on it and using a wire wheel to fray up the edges and rip it apart and kind of destroy it. There's all sorts of different ways in there. You could even make it so that the line on the edge there, instead of being a nice straight smooth line, is very jagged on there, so the blade's kind of going back and forth and tearing the material some and giving you that distressed look. It's all in how you've set it up to cut. And if we're going to do that where we have a jagged edge on there but we want a smooth straight line for our sewing to go down, we'll have to set up our plot file a little bit differently where we have a jagged edge for cutting it. And here I'm showing that the edges, it can fray. As I pull on it, you'll get a little bit of fibers out of there. So if you are aggressive on that, it will fray up on us. The next thing that should be coming up here in just a second is showing an aisle line flatbed cutter. We've got the tray, and the first layer was already cut. The operator's pulling the tray back and putting the second layer on here. And with that second layer in, we'll push the drawer in and hit go, and that will cut out the second portion of it here. So when they're all finished, they'll be able to just peel it back, and it'll have the 2 layers. So working with that Alabama design, this would be very easy and effective to do with just a single shot on there, because they don't have to have a placement line for each one of them. They can put it in the machine at once and let it go. So, and she's going to hold this up here and show you also that the edges are not sealed on this and it will fray. So on something like that, you would want to use a applique stitch, a satin stitch on it. This is a laser engraver cutter, and it's cutting through this. And I'm sure a couple people have noticed that that's not a standard twill. That is a piece of white twill, and we printed with Solutions Clear, which is a product from Printables Warehouse. We printed that design on there, and then using a heat press, applied the Solutions Clear to the white twill. So now we have a pattern across that whole thing, and you can do any design. I did another one that's not in the videos here of a camouflage, and then there's some other neat effects you can do with the laser. So this one's doing a 2-layer also. It did the first layer, and now it's burning through both layers of the twill so that when we're all done, we'll be able to separate it. And you'll see at the end of the video, I tried to start to separate it on there, but I was holding the camera and it wasn't too easy, so we'll shoot over to a section where it shows us pulling it apart. Layering like this makes life so much easier when you're working on the embroidery machine, because everything's all set up and ready to go in one shot. And we're almost done on this. I want you guys to see it coming apart off of there. You can also, I believe there are different places out there that provide laser cut shapes. There's the pre-cut shapes that are already in TwillStitch Pro, which are available from stalls. So if you're working with the pre-cut shapes, you will get it that way. I've also seen people with the roll cut and the flatbed cutter that they've used either a small torch or just a lighter to try to seal up the edges, or even used a hot knife to do it. It's not the most effective means to seal up the edges, but it will work. So just be aware that you can burn your twill that way too, though. I have seen that one. So I'm was trying to pull it apart a little bit there, and now I'm just showing you how it's all separated there. And then we'll go over to a work table, and I'll show you weeding out the two portions so you can see how that's a 2-layer. So here we have that same piece. I'm going to take the outer portion away and just peel them apart. Now how I put these together, and it's very similar to the flatbed one, I just took the top piece there, the white that had already had the Solutions Clear applied to it, and I took the backing of it because it's a pressure sensitive twill, so it's kind of sticky on the back. And I put the two together that way, and so the bottom one still has its backing on it. So very cool. And we're going to pause right there, because then we're going to be talking about some specialty stuff. So we'll go back over to TwillStitch Pro. And say I had this design here, and hopefully it's showing TwillStitch Pro for you. There it goes. My little portion that shows me what you guys can see is a little slow over here. We've got our design here, and I wanted to put my name underneath the Alabama. I wanted to add some lettering into that. Well, TwillStitch Pro has 152 pre-digitized fonts in there. If I go to my A1 tab right here and just click on it, it'll open up my fonts. And I'm wondering if it moved the fonts over to another screen on me like the other one did. Nope, there it goes. So I'll put a click on there wherever I want it to go. I've got my text box open up here, and I'll put Stephen. And when I click on apply, it's going to put my name down there for me. So let's see if we can zoom in on this a little bit. We'll go back to select and zoom in so you guys can see this. And there's Stephen right there. I can go and click on that one. I've got all my properties here. I can do how I want it to run, the underlay if I'm doing pull compensation. I've got all these available to me in there. I can change the height of it. I can change the spacing if I want to space that out. So we'll put 20 in there. Space it out for me. I can take the whole portion here with the centerpiece and move it. I can take and rotate this design here however I want it to. I can take each individual letter. After I've moved that, let's go back a couple here. And with this selected here, I can grab one corner and drag it out, make it a different size there. I can also take this corner here and move this all around on there. Maybe I want to do a stair effect where they're stepping up and down, and hit apply. It's doing stair, and I've got an offset that I can change in this. So we'll go back. So there's a lot of functionality to the portion here where I can mess around with it. You can do all sorts of different effects with it. Take that portion off and grab it and move it around wherever I want. So the lettering is very easy to work with. Maybe I want to change the font. I've got all these different fonts here that are pre-digitized for me. Tons and tons of fonts. So it's easy to select something in there. We'll go with geometric. I have no idea how this one's going to turn out. It's not a bad little font. Let's take that off. I could do italicize it, change that there. We can change our alignment and the type. I can go to a circle. And now the circle, this may be too big for the screen. We'll have to zoom out. Drag that down. Circle makes it go to a space like this. So let's go back and zoom out a little bit and go to our pick tool. Maybe we want that to circle around this, and we'll drag this out. Oops, grab the wrong portion there. Drag it out a little bit and have Stephen go over the top of it. So you can see we can mess around with quite a bit in here. All right, and we're actually going to just delete that portion. So you can see how having all the pre-digitized fonts makes things very easy to bring into it. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to close out the standard, or I'll open up a new design. A lot of people want to see the specialty and different ways to work with this. So that's not what I wanted there. I wanted to go back to my presentation. Here we go. Oops, wrong one. So we'll go back to the presentation. So that was the design process. We created the artwork, imported, did some combine and control with the different boxes in there, adjusted some of the machine functions. You can literally change stitch by stitch if you wanted to, change it from a hit to a jump to a stop, needle change, however you want it in there. I didn't show you the output of the design, so let's go back to that. Once we've got our design here, we've got the Alabama all set. And now we want to save this file into a specific format for us. I always recommend when you go to save, first one you're going to do is the ITS, the Imprintables TwillStitch format, so that I know I have that in there. We'll call it Alabama. Because what will happen is if I don't save it in this format, and later on I need to go back and adjust something, and I've only converted it to, say, a DST, I won't be able to adjust the artwork and everything else in it that I have so much control over in TwillStitch Pro. So first save it as a TwillStitch Pro file, and then I'll go and save as, and now I'm going to make it into that DST file that I'll use for my embroidery machine. And I've got Alabama DST and hit save. And now it's ready to send on over to my embroidery machine. All I need is my cut twill, or if I'm going to hand cut it, I can do it that way. So that was the save functions. And that was it for this slide, output design in proper format. We showed you the cutting of the twill, the roll feed cutter with the GX24, the flatbed cutter, the I-line, and the laser engraver cutter. Another thing that the laser engraver cutter can do that none of the other machines can is it can put a pattern onto that design. It can actually engrave the surface and give it kind of a pattern. So let's take a look at that and go back to our video. And here you can see it. That is that Shen portion there, and hopefully you guys could see it on the darker one. That is laser etched into it. And this blue piece up here, that is all laser etched onto the material. So if you've ever seen denim or something like that where it's got kind of a tone on tone or slightly off shade to it, that's done with a laser engraver to give it that effect. What we can do instead of just a laser engraver is we can also, if you have a large format digital printer, you have access to some of those prints, you can print onto that and then apply that to the twill before cutting. So even if you, say, order the Spectra prints where it's got the different patterns on it, the Spectra patterns, I'm sorry, and you wanted to be able to apply that to the twill, you could heat transfer that to the twill and then cut through both of those, or do your placement stitch through the material and hand cut it off of there. And now you've got a very unique design where it's something like, let's back up here, or something like this Shen design right here. Nobody else has that. That's your own unique design. So with the Spectra patterns, you can even order up to have custom patterns made for you, so you could do this design without having any further equipment, or if you have the equipment available to you, you can customize it on your own. So very cool, neat project that you can do that. Now, what I'm going to show you is a lot of people have asked about the felt and working with those types of designs and everything. And let's see if I've got the artwork set up. We're going to import artwork, and I've got the Shen Appliqué for felt. And what this is, we're going to break this into different colors. We'll make that a red color. This is the outer S, and I can see where all my outer portions are here, so I can combine them. So I've got these three here. I can take those three and right-click on a different color, and now they're their own control group right there. So what this file is broken up as, though, is the red line here is the cut line for my felt. So if I was using a flatbed cutter and I'd apply that felt to it and cut through it, laser cutter, or depending on the thickness of it and the type of material, maybe I'm working with a cotton or some other material, I could even use heat transfer mask material, apply my fabric to that, and cut it with that roll cutter, the GX24. So it is possible to do your own custom patterns with that and have a pre-cut shape. But that's my cut line when I created the artwork for the felt itself. So I don't want it quite like that. So we're going to delete that portion there. And now I've got two different pieces here. I've got a placement line, which is this orange group here. And then I've got the black group inside of it, which is where I'm going to put my bean stitch on the whole design. So what I could do is I'll take this group here, and I'm going to combine it into one single group. So that's one piece of artwork now. And on that one, I'll convert it to, and we're going to make it a run. That's going to be our placement. We'll just make that a run and go to our properties for it so I can check on everything. It's a standard run. I can change the stitch length on it right here. I could have made that a 2-ply or a bean. All I need is a standard run for it. I don't need too terrible much. Again, my tie-in and tie-off on there. I could give it a fabric effect, but this is a placement line for us. And then my transformation, if I wanted to change anything in there, flip it or anything, but we want this design to stay the same. So we'll hit apply on this. Make sure I've got my tie-in and tie-off. I forgot to hit apply. And I see if there's more questions coming in. We're almost done here, and we'll go to question and answer for everybody. So we've got that one there, and now on this other section here, let's combine that. So it's one piece of artwork, so I can do my adjust the holes and everything, which I really won't need to do because I'm going to do a bean stitch with this one, and you folks will see why in a second. We're going to convert this one to a run also, but on this one for the run, let's go to our properties of it. Instead of a standard, I'm going to go to a bean stitch, and I could even change how, make sure I hit apply, how long the stitch is. So maybe I want a real long stitch in there to give it that kind of effect, or however I want to change it about. But I'm going to leave it at that bean stitch and then my tie-in and tie-off. And what you'll be able to do is when I save this as a DST file and I take it over to my embroidery machine, I've got to stop at the end of that one color in between them. I can run this out and it'll lay down a placement stitch. I like to do kind of tone on tone, so say I'm going with a white t-shirt, maybe I'll use a light gray, and then that'll be my placement. I've got my cut felt. I'll use a spray adhesive on it. I can apply it on top of it, and then we will get something very cool like, let me skip ahead a little bit here. Hopefully you guys can see the video coming across. It's showing those different designs, and then it'll jump into me stitching out that one there with the felt fabric. Any second now, video. There we go. And I've already done my placement stitch, and I've glued it on, and you can see it doing that bean stitch. And I had some camera issues where I decided to get close, and you can see them there. So now that real popular Abercrombie or Hollister or anything like that, I've got that right here because those edges will fray up. It'll puff up a little bit on there, and you've got that effect, and you can do it right at home. You don't need to have it sent out to anybody to do. Nice big bean stitch in there. I think I used a 4 on this. And it's going to do the interior portion of that. And as soon as it's done with the S, I'll pop off the hoop and you guys can see it a little bit closer. And this gives you an idea of how to do one of those specialty effects that are out there. Also on the printing, maybe you don't even have you don't have that large format digital printer and you want to do another very cool effect. You can use exact print laser transfer paper, and do the foil effect that we've shown in several other videos on here, where you would print out your design, heat press that onto the twill, put your foil on top of that, and where the design was, the foil will stick to. So when you peel it away, you've got a very glittery effect on the inside of the twill. Still need to cut it or do a run stitch in the placement stitch and tack it down and then cut it by hand, but it's another specialty effect you can do. So let's go back over, and we talked about printed twill, laser engraved twill, the felt. For distressing, you're really leaving the edges out there. I would do very similar to what I did on the felt, where I have an actual cut line that I'm going to delete once I bring it into TwillStitch Pro, because that cut line would go to the inside on some of them to leave it jagged and open, and then my actual placement lines where I want the stitches. So on that one, you have to think about how the design is going to lay out and how it's going to be on the garment itself. And also, like I said before, some people are taking the distressed and they're physically abusing the material so that it can have that falling apart kind of effect to it. So that's the end of the slideshow. I know we've got a few questions that have come up here. Hopefully I've shown you guys some very neat stuff out there. It looks like most of you stayed. And let's hear what the questions are.
Okay, we have one question that was asking again about the triangle stitch and the basic lock, and she said, why would someone use the basic lock as opposed to a triangle, and does it depend on the applique materials?
I don't think it has anything to do with the applique material itself. I haven't seen any noticeable difference between them. I'm not as knowledgeable on the embroidery end of what the real difference is between them. When you zoom in on the program and take a look at it, they don't look too terrible different, but they may lock the fabric down a little bit different. I've used both interchangeably, and all the designs that we've run have stayed very well. So I'm not aware of any differences between them, but maybe some of you out there who are real gurus on the threads can help enlighten me on that one. So if somebody has an answer to that and they can email it to me, I'd be happy to share it with the entire group.
Great. And what is the cutting force used for to cut the twill on the GX24?
Great question. On the GX24, the cutting force, in the video you saw it cutting in it came out real easy there. I did have a brand new blade, and I was cutting that at 90 grams force with a 60-degree blade. We used to, before we got a laser engraver in my wife's shop, we used to use the GX24 for twill all the time. And we would replace the blade when I was getting upwards of 180 to 200, and the edges weren't quite crisp and clear. Maybe it wasn't finishing a line on there. But I have cut twill with the GX24, again a 60-degree blade, all the way up to 200 grams force. And so you don't necessarily have to have a brand new blade all the time for it. So hopefully that answered the individual's question.
Okay. And if you make the lettering large, how do you adjust the length of the stitches?
Make the lettering large, adjust the length of the stitches. Maybe what they're asking, let's see if I'll bring up in TwillStitch Pro. If I want to adjust the length of the stitches, say on this bean stitch here that we were looking at before, the stitch length is right there on my commands for it. So when I go to the properties of it, right click and then properties, I've got this right here, and on the stitch length I've got that. I can adjust it right there. So on if I'm doing, say, let's change this over. We'll convert that to a tackle twill. Your width is the stitch length right there. So if I change this down, let's say we'll do a 2, we'll take it to half. You'll see it's half the length on the column itself. So that would be your stitch length there. So hopefully that answered the individual's question.
Okay. And how do you print the outline so you can hand cut the twill or the applique?
Okay, what that would be, they're talking about if they want to hand cut the twill before they place it on the machine. So they're looking to do a printout of it and have it be actual size so that then they can lay it on the material and cut it all out, glue it on there, or however they're going to do it. What we would do, we take this design right here, and instead of that one being we'll take that back from that tackle twill and we'll just make it a run stitch. And now I've got two separate lines. If I go into my print preview, we'll take a look at that. And on here, on my settings, I can change this so it's actual size. When I change that to actual size, you'll see that it broke it into 2 pages here, and I believe there's another setting. It's under my printer setup, File, and Print Setup. I can change this over to a landscape, and that should fit on there a little bit better. Let's close this and try that again. File, Print Setup. We've got to set the landscape. I can change my paper size if I need it bigger on there, if I've got a larger printer. And now we'll go to File and Print Preview. And there we have it all right there. Check under my settings, and it's doing actual size. And that piece right there, you can change all the different factors if it has all this information on there or not. And that I could cut out and put onto my fabric and have an actual, the pieces are going to be the correct size for me. So hopefully that answered the individual's question.
Okay, and just backtracking to the question before that about making the lettering large, what she was talking about was when you were embroidering the name. So not actually sewing it down, but when you were using the font.
Okay, so let's move this back a little bit, and we'll go back to our font, and we'll pop that in there, and I'll do Stephen again, and we'll hit apply. And I'm thinking what they're asking is how to make this larger. One thing I didn't touch on before too is when you're looking at this here, let's zoom in a little bit. Sorry guys, the screen's jumping on me. To fit, there we go. See how each one of these has an individual piece? I can also move these individuals wherever I want to once I have that control node in there. But to make those larger, I have a height input right here. So say I wanted the Stephen to be 1.5 inches tall, I could put 1.5, and now I've got a 1.5 inch Stephen. So hopefully that answers that. You can do a lot of fun stuff with it. This when it's in this mode too, you can take it and take the control corners. I can stretch it out and do all sorts of effects. Maybe I want this to kind of match the shin, the way that one's going there, how it's kind of coming down to a point, and this is coming to a point, so I'm going to take it and stretch it and have it look like that there. So a lot of stuff you can do with it. Your spacing, height, line spacing. If I had 2 lines there, if I'd hit Stephen and then I put Jackson, and I'm going to do my alignment, centering, hit apply. So now it should pop on the Jackson down there. And I want a little bit more space between there, so I'll put 30. And I don't like how close those are together. Oops, that was spacing the wrong spot. We'll put that 10. And my line spacing right here, let's make that 55. So there's more room in between those. So there's a lot of controls here with working with the text. This is very powerful on that end of it. So hopefully that answers the individual's question.
Okay. And the next question is, when the software is installed, is there a tutorial that comes with it?
There's some help files. There's some videos out there on the stalls.com YouTube channel, I believe, and we can absolutely help you folks through it. I don't think there's a tutorial integrated with this program, but there is a lot of support out there that we can help you through. There's some designs that we can show you, and I am going to be doing some more training timeout videos, which are on my Stephen Jackson IW YouTube page. And we will be doing some with the TwillStitch Pro. So if anybody's looking to get into this program, I will be sending out some information after the webinar, and I'll be showing you, providing you guys with some package deals and everything. And also, we'll be able to take any questions if somebody's looking for a design to test out. We can get them some designs to test out, and you can see how easy it is to use.
Okay, I just have a couple more quick ones.
Sure.
Since you're a laser engraver, to cut your applique, how do you adjust your depth for that 3-layer design?
It's in the software with the individual laser. The particular unit you saw there was a universal laser, and on that one there it has an automatic setup to do 2-layer. You could adjust it to do 3 or more layers manually by doing 2 layers at a time. The biggest design I ever did with layers was one that was 5 layers deep, just to see if I could. It worked out. It was a little tricky, but it did work out. So that's part of the software that comes with the individual laser engraver.
Okay, and last question is, can you import an art file from Corel to work with?
You wouldn't import a Corel Draw file, a CDR file. What you would do is import either the encapsulated PostScript, or in Corel you can save it as that PLT file, a plotter file. And that's the plotter file I found is the best one to work with in here. So in Corel you simply export it and you choose the plotter file function. If you have a Corel Draw file and it's the only thing that you have and you don't have Corel Draw, well, you could probably contact me and I can convert it over for you. So that's a quick and easy way.
Okay, I think that's the last of our questions.
Any more questions? Okay. Well, I really want to thank everybody for coming out. Looks like almost everybody stayed with us the whole time, so hopefully it was helpful to all of you. Again, I'm Stephen Jackson with Imprintables Warehouse. Shouldn't be that hard to say. Come visit us in imprintables.com, 800-347-0068. My direct line is 518-630-6655. You can check out the videos and the training timeout series that we're doing on Stephen Jackson IW on YouTube. My email address is right there, and don't forget to check out my blog, thegarmentinch.com, for more tips, tricks, and articles on the industry. Again, thanks a lot for everybody stopping by, and we'll hope to see you next time.